Chapter 176, Problems in the Details. There were still 2 hours until midnight. Chow Yifan stopped being so sentimental. He told God that he'd be right back and then temporarily logged out of 1-inch Ash. He switched accounts in order to run Desolate Land in another server and do a quick review of the dungeon. As a pro player, he obviously knew how to run this dungeon. However, setting a record meant that he had to understand both the details and the general picture. Chow Yifan began to study the types and patterns of the monsters. What route to choose when advancing through the dungeon? The characteristics and patterns of every boss. Chow Yifan used his main account to run Desolate Land 3 times. There wasn't anything wrong with using this account. No matter how borderline he was in the team, having been able to get on the team was already recognition of his strength. Although he was a bit worse than his teammates, he was still much better than new players with only strong mechanics like Tangru and Steam Bun Invasion. After familiarizing himself in those 3 runs, it was almost midnight. Chow Yifan switched accounts and returned to the 10th server. He then sent Yishu a message and both sides agreed on where they would meet up outside Desolate Land. On his way there, Chow Yifan saw that there was someone in the World Channel repeatedly calling out Lord Grimm for a challenge. One of his challenges was the Desolate Land record and the other was a duel with Lord Grimm. Who is this guy? Chow Yifan muttered to himself. The dungeon record was another matter. After all, that could only be done with a team. And moreover, the record limit for low-level dungeons could be done by normal players as well. But a duel, this was a direct clash between the 2 sides' skill levels. To actually challenge God Yi Chu so arrogantly, such a person made Chow Yifan completely speechless. Out of everyone he knew, even their team captain Wang Jiaxi didn't dare have this type of attitude in front of God Yi Chu. The only person he knew who might issue such an open challenge would probably be Tyranny's Han Wenqing. This god had begun opposing God Yi Chu ever since he joined the alliance. After ending Excellent Era's consecutive championship titles, the two became true rivals. In terms of mechanics, Han Wenqing was on par with other gods. But this guy was extremely aggressive. In addition, his personality was very direct and stubborn. If he ever saw any mistakes, he would immediately start shouting. Rumors say that after one of the matches, where Tyranny had performed terribly, Han Wenqing furiously reprimanded the team. He repeatedly watched the recordings of that day's match. Every time he saw a mistake he would immediately start cursing madly. At that time, Tyranny's boss had come to visit. Midway through, his cell phone suddenly rang and the angry cursing stopped. Han Wenqing turned his head and glared coldly at the boss. He said 2 words, "Get out." The boss gave him face and immediately ran out to pick up his phone. Tyranny's entire team was scared speechless. Even their boss had been roared away to one side. How could they dare talk back? Han Wenqing's behavior was like this as well. In terms of experience and skill, only he could compare with Yi Chu. But now, in-game, some random guy was shouting at God Yi Chu for a challenge. Chow Yifan truly didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. Outside of Desolate Land, Chow Yifan's 1-inch Ash finally met with God's Lord Grimm. He also saw Tangru's Soft Mist, someone who couldn't be considered a stranger to him anymore. He had also met Steamed Bun Invasion before, in the very beginning. Besides them, there was the launcher, Cleansing Mist. Seeing this character, the first thing anyone, who knew about the identity of the person playing Lord Grimm, would immediately think of Su Mucheng. She was someone who always stood by Yi Chu, just like that launcher who always stood behind One Autumn Leaf. But now that Yi Chu had retired, was this launcher still Su Mucheng? Chow Yifan didn't ask. Even though he was a member of a champion team, he clearly knew his current position in it. In the eyes of other teams, his existence was even weaker. His other teammates had fought against other teams' pro players and had become friends. But Chow Yifan didn't have any opponents, so he didn't have that type of friend. "So you're here." Seeing that 1-inch Ash had arrived, Yi Shu greeted him. "We'll begin at 12 o'clock sharp." "Okay," Chow Yifan replied. He opened up the dungeon record leaderboards to verify the current record. But when he looked at it this time, he immediately felt that one of the team members on the leaderboards was somewhat familiar. Wasn't this the guy who had challenged God? No wonder he's so arrogant. That record really is quite good. It looks like he's an expert too. But it looks like he doesn't know who his opponent is, Chow Yifan thought to himself. Any problems with your equipment? Yi Shu asked. No problem, Chow Yifan replied. When he bought the substitution leveling services, he had also ordered a set of equipment. The current 1-inch Ash had a full level 30 Ghostblade set and was also carrying a level 30 Purple Ta Chi, Demon Slaying Blade. His accessories were quite good too. We won't be going for speed on our first run. We have a new player, so this run will be used to let him learn our strategy, Yi Shu said. One time is enough. Steamed Bun Invasion was probably thinking of Full Moon Guild's guild leader. In the beginning, Yi Shu had said the same thing, but that guild leader still wasn't very outstanding even after 3 runs. It'll be enough, Yi Shu laughed. On the side, even though Chow Yifan hadn't replied, he could feel his heart boiling. Seeing that there was still some time before midnight, he ran to splash cold water on his face. He had to maintain his composure and focus. He couldn't let down God. They're refreshed, let's go. At midnight, the dungeon entries refreshed. Soi Shu led his team into Desolate Land. At this moment, Blue River, who was also beginning to run the dungeons, began to look anxiously at the messages in the world channel. Poplar Beach's spamming often made him feel somewhat angry. He was only being so arrogant because he had participated in setting a faster record. This endless enthusiasm didn't seem like it was to prove their name, but just to create an unreasonable scene. This wasn't the first time Blue River had seen people do this, but the problem this time was that that character was from Blue Brook Guild. Everyone who saw these messages knew that. The Desolate Land records hanging on the leaderboards had their name on it. Not only did he have Guild's name behind him, he was also one of the experts on the leaderboards. Blue River felt that shouting on the world channel constantly like this was so shameful. It wasn't as if Blue River hadn't warned him. It was just that once Poplar Beach received it, he would laugh at him and mock him. Blue River was feeling conflicted. He obviously hoped that their guild's record would be able to remain up there, but when he thought of how happy Poplar Beach was, he couldn't help but want someone to just step all over the record. Of course, the only who could step all over the record was Lord Grimm. Blue River was feeling somewhat uneasy. He had been paying attention to Lord Grimm's level. It looked like he had spent much longer at level 30 than one normally would. At this moment, Blue River and the others in the front were already level 33. The higher the level, the more experience was needed. This was why the distance between them was getting smaller. With how fast Lord Grimm had been leveling, he should have only been 5 levels behind them. But right now, he had stopped at level 30. The possible meanings this implicated was why Blue River felt uneasy. Especially now. Blue River had received a message from guild members at Desolate Land saying that they had seen Lord Grimm's group with a new member called 1-inch Ash, a Ghostblade without any guild. 1-inch Ash? Who was this? Blue River looked at their guild's name of lists. Last time, there was that Blade Master Flowing Tree who had only gone online for a brief moment. He couldn't help but feel alarmed. Meanwhile, in Desolate Land's dungeon, the newly joined Chow Yifan was employing the strategy that Yi Shu was instructing and was beautifully coordinating with the others. Yeah, just like that. Pay attention to our attack tempo, the timing of your ghost boundaries, and your cooldowns. Maximize the efficiency, Yi Shu continuously instructed. Coaching a kid with a solid foundation really was a lot easier, unlike Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion, who had to learn the dungeon strategy by rote memorization. In terms of their understanding of the dungeon, in reality, these two weren't even as good as Full Moon Guild's guild leader. Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion's mechanics were there, but they had to memorize the strategy and increase their game knowledge. As for Full Moon Guild's guild leader, he was familiar with the game. Everything Yi Shu said, he understood. It was just that he wasn't used to it, which was why he had so much trouble. As for Chow Yifan, he had the strengths of both sides. Yi Shu immediately saw this. He could easily keep up with them, which was why Yi Shu was certain that one practice run was enough. After all, he was a pro player. You don't need to start with Shadow Image. Instead, it'd be better to attack and deal more damage. You won't have the aggro change to you and you won't take any damage, Yishu said. Shadow Image is a ghost that Ghostblades can summon at level 25. This ghost can be carried by the user, except it would just be a ghost surrounding the user. The ghost could absorb and reduce damage. The higher the level, the greater the reduction and the more hits it could take. This was a skill solely used for defense. Yishu had told Chao Yifan to not use the skill. This was because the other party members would protect him. Chao Yifan was used to being cannon fodder. But now, the team was actively putting in energy to protect him. Ooh, this ice boundary. Is there's a problem? Chao Yifan was terrified. No, it was done very well. Yishu turned around to say to Steamed Bun Invasion, Steamed Bun, it was your mistake this time. It was mine, Steamed Bun Invasion shouted in response. Originally, the ice boundary shouldn't have been used there, but because of Steamed Bun Invasion's mistake, the situation had changed. However, Chao Yifan had adjusted as well. When he cast his ice boundary, he immediately got the crowd control effect he wanted, reducing the team's pressure. Ice Soul was a boundary ghost that could be summoned by level 30 Ghostblades. Enemies inside the boundary would take ice elemental magic damage and there was even a chance for the targets to be frozen. It was a more attack-oriented ghost boundary. However, there was actually a better choice you could have made. After criticizing Steamed Bun Invasion's mistake, he returned to Chao Yifan. Chapter 177, Dual Linking Ghost Boundaries. Look, Steamed Bun Invasion's previous mistake made it so that the monsters weren't gathered perfectly. However, the 3 monsters that slipped through just happened to be heading towards you. Here, the best choice wasn't to immediately use Ice Boundary to control them. Instead, you could have first used a Ghost Slash to send the 3 monsters back into the desired positions and make up for Steamed Bun's mistake. Then, using Ice Boundary would have been perfect, Yishu said. But there were more than 3 that had slipped through, Chao Yifan said. Aren't we a team? Yishu smiled. We can help fix the mistake and coordinate with you as well. If a mistake like this happens, does this mean that there's no hope for setting the record? Chao Yifan said. Haha, from that perspective, such a mistake really wouldn't be good. We could make up for the lost time, but it wouldn't be enough. However, more important than the record is training our game knowledge and decision-making by going through these types of scenarios. In the previous scenario, it was easy to pull off an ice boundary. But that was in a dungeon. What if that was in a match? Could you be certain that you wouldn't be interrupted while using your ice boundary in a scenario where you have no cover? Yishu said. Chao Yifan immediately understood. I understand. Even though this is only a dungeon, you still have to try hard and increase your game knowledge, Yishu said. Right, Chao Yifan responded. He felt as if a door in his heart was opening, as if the bottleneck he had been stuck at was slowly being broken through. He wasn't sure if it was because he had switched classes or because he had received coaching under a god or maybe even both. Chao Yifan thought. Even though he had already taken the dungeon very seriously, after hearing Yishu's words, he felt that he still hadn't placed enough emphasis onto it. Even if it was just a dungeon, there were still lots of places for improvement. Under Yishu's constant instructions, the team quickly pushed forward. Yishu's team was using the missing a player strategy they were experimenting with last night. The monsters that they weren't originally able to kill fast enough and the places where they had originally struggled with, suddenly turned good with the addition of 1-inch ash. Tang Ru felt indescribably shocked. To be able to create a strategy before one of their members had ever coordinated with them before, just how much further did she need to go before she could catch up to Yishu? You too, Yishu called out to Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion, pay more attention to his ghost boundaries. Coordination is mutual. Now that I think about it, do you two know the effects of these ghost boundaries? No, the 2 new players said. Yishu was helpless. He had no other choice but to give them a brief introduction about the skill. Support classes who provided support on the sidelines didn't necessarily count as coordination. Those being supported have to fully utilize the support. If you don't even know what the effects of the support are, then how are you going to utilize them? In a level 30 Ghostblade's arsenal, besides the defense-oriented Ghost Shadow Image and the attack-oriented Boundary Ghost Ice Soul, there was also Sword Soul that could be learned at level 10. The Sword Soul's strength was that the allies within its boundary would have increased strength and intelligence, which determined the amount of physical damage and magic damage one could deal. It could be said that any class within the Sword Soul would gain huge buffs. This skill was also called Sword Boundary by players. The skill could be learned at level 10 and could be skilled up every 3 levels. A level 30 Ghostblade could have a level 7 Sword Soul, which would increase strength and intelligence by 105. As soon as this number was said by Yi Shu, Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion jumped back in astonishment. The two checked their profiles and immediately recognized how terrifying an increase in 105 points of strength and intelligence were. Battle mages and brawlers had the same strength growth. At level 30, without any equipment or stat rewards, their base strength was 105 points. Of course, a character's base stats weren't the most accurate indicators. In reality, with their equipment and rewards, the two characters would have much more. However, 105 extra strength and intelligence was enough to make them start sweating. Ghostblades had to cast Sword Soul at the right time, and the other characters would have to fully utilize the Sword Soul as well. They should try and deal as much damage as possible within the sword boundary during the duration of the effect. Seeing this incredible number, Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion already understood. The coordination between the two sides was now smoother. Even though it was their first practice trial, it was already much better than their previous trial with Full Moon Guild's guild leader. Their coordination with each other had been improved by the utilization of the support, but the crucial point was still Chao Yifan's outstanding view of the general situation. Chao Yifan himself felt like he was a fish back in the water in this dungeon. No, to be more accurate, it was in this team that he found the feeling of being a fish back in the water. Chao Yifan had already believed that even if they weren't running a dungeon, even if they were in any other place, even if they were in a pro match, he felt as if he had a place in the team. So moved. In such a short moment of time, feelings of being blessed had risen many times. In return, he tried his hardest in this dungeon. They pushed through the dungeon without a hitch. In the blink of an eye, they reached the final boss Toya. Chao Yifan looked forward to the god's commands. He knew that Toya was the most influential part of the record. In the end, God actually talked less in this area. The entire team was more free to do their own thing. Even though there was some coordination, it didn't seem like it was be good enough. They seemed more passive in front of Toya. Chao Yifan was a pro, after all. He could roughly judge that with the way they were playing, they wouldn't be able to beat the record. Chao Yifan felt a bit puzzled. Even he could come up with some sort of strategy for this part. He could at least do better than their current strategy of randomly playing. God Yi Chu had to have some sort of plan, right? Just as he was thinking this, he heard God's Lord Grimm move next to him and ask, "What do you think about this?" After a brief pause, Chao Yifan said the truth, "I think that if we play like this then breaking the record might be difficult." "You don't need to worry." Tang Ru's soft mist had also come over. Hearing their discussion, she added, "All of this is because someone here refuses to go all out. If not, then you'd be seeing a completely different scene." "Ha," Yi Shu laughed. He then said to Chao Yifan, "When the time comes, you'll know what to do. You can do it." Chao Yifan was a bit lost, but he didn't ask. After finishing the run, they had completely understood the strategy. 2 chances. Yi Shu wasn't only saying this to Chao Yifan, but to the other 3 as well. Having strong mechanics didn't mean that you wouldn't make mistakes. "Yeah," Tang Ru simply answered. "Relax. I only show my true strength at crucial times like this," Steamed Bun Invasion said. "You too," Su Mucheng reminded Yi Shu as well. Yi Shu obviously wasn't someone who was immune to mistakes. In his 10 years of gaming, he had plenty of experience making mistakes. Begin. Under this command, they began. In the beginning, where they needed to pull monsters, their current strategy was similar to their original one. Except this time, Chao Yifan's once-inch ash helped pull the monsters. As soon as they gathered together, Sword, Soul, Yi Shu had only said one of the words, when Chao Yifan's sword soul had been casted. The timing had been grasped perfectly, coordinating seamlessly with the rest of the team. Yi Shu was extremely happy. Bringing an expert like this was so much easier, he grasped everything so quickly. The others were also controlling the monsters. If not, then the monsters would escape the sword soul's range. The difference between their DPS inside the boundary and outside the boundary was completely different. There was only one bad part. Sword Soul only lasted 20 seconds, while the cooldown was 30 seconds. There was no way they could keep it on forever, there would always be 10 seconds of free time. But this time, the instant the Sword Soul disappeared, Lord Grimm suddenly jumped backwards to escape from the mob. He then waved his sword and a shadowy mist leapt out of his sword, congealing into a dark violet ghost. 1-inch Ash's sword soul had faded away, but a new one had followed up closely. Sword soul. If it's sword soul, I know it as well, Yi Shu said. Lord Grimm's sword danced and followed up with a berserker skill. The Ghostblade's sword soul was a level 10 skill, so of course unspecialized had it. The effects of the two couldn't overlap, but it could be used to fill up the empty gap. This type of coordination had a name in Glory, dual linking ghost boundaries. In the current professional alliance, only Team Void used this type of strategy. Besides their team captain Li Zan's Crying Devil, they also had another Ghostblade class. However, Yi Shu and Chao Yifan's dual linking ghost boundaries weren't perfect. After all, Lord Grimm's unspecialized class could only learn the Sword Soul and no other ghost summoning skill. Even so, it still let them maximize their DPS. The first wave was cleared quickly inside of the ghost boundary. Second wave. Third wave. Fourth wave. On their smooth journey through, there wasn't any excessive talk. Not just Chao Yifan, but Tang Ru and Steam Bun Invasion no longer needed Yi Shu's constant reminders after running it so many times. The two weren't lacking in the slightest in what they had to do. Chao Yifan's Phantom Demon was doing even better. His ghost boundaries came out whenever they were needed, and he wouldn't mess anything up whenever he wasn't. He also linked together with Lord Grimm's occasional sword soul well, too. Without any suspense, everyone swiftly smashed their way to the dungeon's rear garden. Only a mere 19 minutes had passed. Chapter 178, Their wishes finally came true. For the final boss, Toya, if they played randomly like the previous run, there might not be enough time. This was originally a relatively difficult boss. Blue Brook Guild's Changing Spring and the other experts had to train hard numerous times in order to suppress it through coordination. But what about now? What method was left in store? Chao Yifan recalled how they had said that God wasn't going all out and became a bit curious as well as a bit uncertain. Sword Soul, Yi Shu yelled out, while they were rushing forward. If Chao Yifan was making the decision, he definitely wouldn't cast Sword Soul so early. However, he trusted in the god's decision and immediately cast Sword Soul when he heard it. 1-inch Ash's demon slaying blade flashed. A ghostly mist congealed into a Sword Soul after the chant and formed a boundary. This Sword Soul shout also seemed to be instructions to others as well. Cleansing Mist's hand cannon spit out a flame tongue and hit the idol boss, Toya, with an artillery shell. Toya turned his head and rushed at them. He stepped on a stone in the garden and somersaulted forward. In midair, he whipped out his leg to kick them. Lord Grimm moved up as well. His myriad manifestation umbrella turned into a battle lance. The two brushed past each other, however Toya suddenly disappeared. He had unexpectedly been circle swung onto the ground by Lord Grimm. So quick. Chao Yifan's point of view was very different from Tang Ru's and Steam Bun Invasion's. Whenever Yi Shu attacked, those two had seen it so often that they were completely indifferent to it. However, Chao Yifan could see how difficult the move was. Positioning, speed, precision, prediction. In this type of situation, if even a single one was slightly lacking, the attack would have failed. Just using circle swing didn't mean that you would hit the monster. Glory isn't such a simple game. With the way circle swing captured the target, Toya had no way of quick recovering in order to avoid this knockdown. But he could be considered quick as well. Right when he crashed to the ground, he sent out a shock wave in order to get back up. Lord Grimm had already anticipated this. As soon as his circle swing flung Toya down to the ground, he immediately leapt back. Not only did Toya's shockwave not hit anything, Lord Grimm drew out his sword and sent out a sword draw towards him. So quick. Chow Yifan had the same impression as before. Toya and Lord Grimm's battle tempo really was fast. But Toya was a system NPC. He didn't need to think or make decisions, but Lord Grimm. He was able to make consecutive moves without practically any time to think. Each move he made suppressed Toya's offensive. The strength of an unspecialized. Chow Yifan understood this, but more importantly, even with an arsenal of skills available for use, God Yi Chu was able to pick the most suitable choice with little time to think. His quick and accurate decision-making were almost like a robot's. Too scary, Chow Yifan was astonished. Just how much experience did he have? If this was any other pro player, they might be able to make the same accurate decisions, but to do so with almost no time to think, only a select few could do that. Experience could only be gained with time, and time couldn't be controlled. Old generals could no longer be as full of energy as new players. As for new players, if they wanted the experience of the old generals, the only way was to wait and become old generals themselves. In this situation, where Lord Grimm was suppressing Toya by himself, the final obstacle became incomparably easy. To the other four, this battle was just like any other. They were against a very ordinary boss. All they had to do was coordinate with Lord Grimm and deal damage. Sword Soul, Ice Soul. Chow Yifan switched between the two boundaries. He could also use Ghost Slash, Moonlight Slash, Full Moon Slash to deal damage. However, these slash skills clearly weren't too high-leveled. Skill points had to be saved for skilling up the Phantom Ghosts. The damage dealt by Phantom Demons couldn't compare with the damage dealt by Sword Demons. 1 minute. Toya's health had already dropped by. If they maintained this tempo, they would definitely finish the battle in 3 minutes. With so much time left, they could even afford to make a few mistakes. Too strong. Chow Yifan lamented. Even though an enormous amount of importance had been attached to him, he understood very clearly that he wasn't the final deciding factor in setting the record. It was a fact that Phantom Demons could increase the entire team's strength. In theory, the more members in the team, the more useful a Phantom Demon was. This was why all of the big guilds would specially train a few Phantom Demons. However, in the Professional Alliance's official matches, the number of players that could go on stage was restricted to only 5 players. This limited the amount of support a Phantom Demon could provide. In a 5-man team, Phantom Demons weren't the worst class, but the value of their support might not make them more valuable than other classes either. Their existence wasn't a necessity, but rather just another option. In Desolate Land, the usefulness of a Phantom Demon was similar to this as well. He could provide support, but he wouldn't be the main factor for why the team would break the record. The true factor was still Lord Grimm. It was because the strengths of an unspecialized could be fully utilized which allowed them to surpass this dungeon's limit. It was because of the unspecialized that they could employ dual overlapping ghost boundaries. It was because of the unspecialized that they could completely suppress Toya. In addition, Lord Grimm's weapon was clearly self-made. It was clearly a top-tier silver weapon. How could Chow Yifan not know about silver weapons? There was no way other teams had this type of advantage in damage. The record was right in front of them. 2 minutes had passed. Toya's health had dropped down by. Attack, attack, attack. The 5 continued to attack. This was only the second time Chow Yifan had coordinated with the others, yet their coordination wasn't lacking in the slightest. Actively coordinating with others, this was his biggest strength. Whether this was because of talent or because of he was trained as a person on the edge, no one knew. Careful, almost red blood. When Toya's health had dropped down to 10%, Yi Shu warned them as usual. Tang Ru and the others were completely indifferent. Toya becoming enraged didn't mean anything. He would still be suppressed by Lord Grimm. On the other hand, Chow Yifan made preparations for red blood. As soon as he saw Toya go into red blood, he suddenly used the grab skill Ghost Claw. After capturing Toya, he followed up with a Moonlight Slash, launching Toya into the air. Icy frost formed at the tip of his blade. The ice shattered and an ice soul flashed out. Ice boundary? The mid-air Toya continuously took ice damage. When he fell, he froze into a giant ice cube. The team rushed forward to attack. However, the boss's resistance was high, so the freeze didn't last long. But after breaking out of the ice, what could Toya do next? Under Lord Grimm's lead, Toya's health continued to plummet. Sky Strike, Dragon Tooth, Falling Flower Palm, Anti-Tank Missile, and even a Wretched Brick. In the final string of attacks, the explosion from the anti-tank missile sent Toya flying into the stone wall. No one moved up to continue attacking. Toya had been killed. System announcement. Congratulations to players Lord Grimm, Cleansing Mist, Steamed Bun Invasion, Soft Mist, 1-inch Ash for breaking the Desolate Land record. Time, 22 hours 35 minutes and 22 seconds. After this brief message appeared, the World Channel exploded. There wasn't any excessive amazement. For new players in the new server, they didn't have any concept of what the time for the records should be. They weren't like the veterans who jumped in fright at this terrifying record. For the 10th server's players, they only had one thought: the record had been broken. It had been broken by Lord Grimm again. As a result, mostly congratulation messages appeared on the World Channel. Their congratulations weren't directed towards Lord Grimm, but rather Blue Brook Guild, especially that Cloud Listening Blade from Blue Brook Guild. Cloud Listening Blade was Poplar Beach, who was constantly shouting at Lord Grimm to fight him, to break their record. At this moment, the players were all congratulating Blue Brook Guild and Cloud Listening Blade for having their wishes finally come true. The players were sarcastic and savage. It didn't matter how skilled or experienced they were. The new players were all mocking them. Poplar Beach was pale. He had sent another message a few moments ago. He specially guarded this time to provoke him. And in the end, a system announcement had given him a reply. Impossible. Poplar Beach didn't want to believe it. The record they had set was already the limit. Poplar Beach had been confident that it wasn't possible to improve it, which was why he had been so arrogant. But now, the other side actually improved the time by about 2 minutes. Poplar Beach couldn't imagine how this was possible. The mocking continued. The person who had been stepped on. This type of show was something everyone loved to see. Everyone was discussing what Cloud Listening Blade was probably feeling right now. Sharp comments popped up one after another. Poplar Beach didn't want to look at his screen. He was afraid that he'd die from anger in front of his computer. How should he respond? Poplar Beach had his head lowered as he stared at his keyboard. He didn't know what keys he should press. He suddenly heard a system prompt telling him that a friend had gone offline, making Poplar Beach lift up his head to look. The one who had gone offline was Blue River. Poplar Beach obviously knew where Blue River was going. Poplar Beach felt embarrassed and resentful. The guy had finally found his sore spot. Poplar Beach was aware that things weren't looking good. How did Lord Grimm and his group set this record? These guys didn't have all orange equipment, right? This thought kept circling around Poplar Beach's head, but he wasn't convinced. Would he make such a large investment just for a dungeon record? Moreover, this was the new server. Even if you had the money, that didn't mean it was possible to gather a full set of level 30 orange equipment for yourself, let alone an entire team. How could orange equipment be as common as cabbage? Lord Grimm. To be able to beat our record, it looks like you really do have some skill. Do you have time to duel me now? Poplar Beach hesitated for a long time, but in the end, he pressed enter and sent it. Chapter 179, A Chance for a Comeback. The entire world was mocking Poplar Beach's Cloud Listening Blade, so of course they were waiting for his response. As a result, many saw this message and a bunch of new messages immediately appeared. Comments such as Cloud Listening Blade is such a man, Cloud Listening Blade is a true hero, Cloud Listening Blade refuses to die with his head low, and so on. They were still filled with sarcasm. Clearly, no one liked arrogant guys like him. This didn't mean that people who like to be arrogant wouldn't know this, it was just that arrogant people weren't arrogant so they could be liked. They were arrogant because they liked the pleasure of standing above others and looking down on them. When Poplar Beach had bragged about the record he had set, although everyone was angry, they had no way of beating his record. This was the pleasure of being arrogant. But now, when he was above everyone, he had suddenly been stepped on. This was an extremely painful feeling. The reason Poplar Beach continued to demand a duel against Lord Grimm was so that he could keep up his arrogant attitude. He couldn't do anything about the record, so his only choice was to use a duel to prove that he wasn't a braggart, but rather an amazing top-tier player. This was what it truly meant to be arrogant. Amidst the storm of ridicule, Poplar Beach waited for Lord Grimm's reply. He didn't have to wait long. This time, Lord Grimm finally replied to him, "How about tomorrow afternoon? Use your main account." "Good, I hope that you won't run away," Poplar Beach coldly typed out. He then waited for a very long time, but no reply came. How could Yi Shu care to respond to such a pointless provocation? Yi Shu had already brought his party into the dungeon again. This time, everyone was still playing diligently, especially at the final boss, Toya. Everyone coordinated with Lord Grimm even better this time. This time, the record had been broken again. 22 hours 29 minutes and 57 seconds. The world went into an uproar again. The record had improved by 6 seconds. It wasn't much. However, at this record limit, another 6 seconds wasn't easy. It was practically the result of a perfect run. At the same time, after the 3 runs ended, Lord Grimm and the other 4 characters leveled up to level 31. Su Mucheng left first to sleep. Chao Yifan was also a pro player. He shouldn't have had so much free time. But after being with Yi Shu and the others for these 3 runs, a completely different feeling had already risen up in his heart. When the 3 runs were finished, he actually wasn't willing to go to sleep and went to Line Canyon with them. On Blue Brook Guild's side, after changing Spring heard Blue River return with the news, they rushed over to the 10th server and saw the new record on the leaderboards. They were all speechless. Before they could even recover, the record had been broken again. One time, maybe they were just miraculously lucky. But 2 times in a row? That, without a doubt, was a proof of their strength. Even though Changing Spring had braced himself for this long ago, from the guild's point of view, this was a disastrous result. However, there was nothing they could do. If they hadn't fought for it, there was no way they could explain it to their own guild. Right now, even at the guild headquarters in the Heavenly Domain, they were discussing the great battle over the records in the 10th server. Everyone, particularly Poplar Beach and his group, would agree to a compromise only if there was no other choice. In order to keep the peace in Blue Brook Guild, they had to sacrifice a bit of the 10th server's Blue Brook Guild's reputation. At least, right now, they were only adding frost to the snow. They were already a laughingstock in the 10th server. Their image could only be recovered at a later time. It could be said that, from here on out, Blue Brook Guild's development would fall behind the other guilds. However, a chance for a comeback was still possible. Poplar Beach's duel with Lord Grimm. This was their chance. Even though Blue River wasn't in favor of this duel and wasn't optimistic about it, he had no choice but to admit that if Poplar Beach won, then they'd be able to win back their guild's image in the 10th server. This duel was being followed by many. The entire world was talking about it. Who knew how many would wait for the afternoon show? Poplar Beach's actions, from a reasoning standpoint, weren't stupid. This was actually the best way of winning back their guild's prestige. However, could he win? Blue River was very doubtful, but he couldn't say anything. After all was said and done, he was always for the guild. At this moment, he was hoping that Poplar Beach would win, even though he could foresee that if Poplar Beach actually won, then his arrogance would rise from the earth to the heavens. This struggle over the record deeply impacted tyrannical ambition as well. Blue Brook Guild had bravely stepped out. This was something they wished to see. As a result, they didn't rush to fight for the Line Canyon record and decided to carry their tarnished name for 2 more days. They wanted to see what Lord Grimm's attitude was and what he would do. In the end, they saw it all. Lord Grimm had sneakily stolen the level 36 wild boss first kill and then easily stepped on Blue Brook Guild's record twice. Tyrannical Ambition's boss, Zhang Yu, had personally come to the 10th server as well. Similarly, he also gathered the guild's strongest troops to come over. But after seeing this result, he quickly gave up on his original plan. The record's limit? It seemed like there were 2 of them. One for normal players like them and another for Lord Grimm's team. Zhang Yu was truly doubting whether Lord Grimm had set the record for the same dungeon. The record that was the limit in their eyes had been crushed by minutes. What do we do? Talk with Lord Grimm. Cold Knight was naturally depressed. Why was the 10th server so troublesome? Such a difficult guy had popped up. Let's not rush. They're still a few days away from reaching level 33. Right now, Blue Brook Guild is in the spotlight, so we're being overlooked. I'll see if there's any other way to resolve this situation. Giving in to Lord Grimm's demands isn't good. We have to at least show that we have the strength to resist his suppression, even if it is just once. After that, we can still negotiate with him and we'll have a better time, Zhang Yu said. How do we prove our strength? Cold Knight stared blankly. Their experts clearly wouldn't cut it. Blue Brook Guild was their proof for that. I can try and ask the team, Zhang Yu said. That's a bit too much, right? Cold Knight began sweating. Team Tyranny was a powerful team that was aiming to be champions. Ask them to help them set a record in the 10th server? With the team captain Han Wenking's personality, Cold Knight felt like they were looking to be shouted at. Zhang Yu's suggestion was too brave. Let me think. Clearly, Zhang Yu was also hesitant. Besides these two guilds, the other guilds were extremely happy seeing Lord Grimm turn Blue Brook Guild's record limit into ashes, and twice too. Their emotions were constantly going up and down. But after taking joy in their enemy's plight, they also had to ponder over their own situation. This issue really was quite troublesome. The night went by like this. After Poplar Beach arranged for the duel, he left the 10th server and went on his main account. He went to the arena and fought for the entire night. He specifically looked for opponents with high win rates and practiced fiercely. In the blink of an eye, the afternoon came and Poplar Beach went to the 10th server to look for Lord Grimm. He hadn't slept well at all. He was already feeling tired, but his mind couldn't calm down. As soon as he closed his eyes, he would think of the arena. Even compared to that time he decided to challenge Blue Bridge Spring Snow, he had never felt so nervous before. Even though he wasn't in his best condition, it was truly too shameful to schedule the duel for a different date. Even if he did, he still might not be able to calm down. By then, his condition would be even worse. Poplar Beach did a quick search and found that Lord Grimm was online. He immediately shouted at him in the World Channel. The players in the entire server shook. He had arrived. He had finally arrived. You should go create the room, Lord Grimm replied. Level field, Poplar Beach switched to his main account and entered the arena. He created a room and invited Lord Grimm. In Happy Internet Cafe, Yishu left the 10th server and went to find Chen Guo. Boss Chen was also playing Glory right now. She was sitting in front of her computer and her hands were moving about like the wind. Yishu blew out 2 smoke rings. Boss Chen's avatar staggered. She turned around and yelled angrily, "What are you doing?" "Boss, let me borrow your account," Yishu said. "To do what?" "To PK with someone," Yishu said. "Who? What was his name again?" Yishu scratched his head. Chen Guo rolled her eyes and said as her character returned to the main city, "Level or free?" "Level," Yishu said. "Room number?" "I don't know." "Then how am I supposed to look for it?" Chen Guo asked. "Go to the side and say that Lord Grimm has arrived or something," Yishu said. Chen Guo typed it in. Soon after, a pile of messages from cheering spectators covered the screen, scaring Chen Guo. After that, she received an invite and accepted it. She entered the field. The map that had been chosen was the most basic ring. It was a simple and straightforward map. Most players liked it. After Chen Guo's character went in, she immediately sucked in a cold breath. For there to be so many spectators, this was something she had never imagined. What did you do? Chen Guo had originally planned on playing for a while, but after seeing so many spectators, she immediately felt that the situation was important. She didn't want to mess things up, so she got up and let Yishu take over. And at this moment, the current receptionist Tangru stretched out her neck to ask, "Did it start?" "Did it start?" "About to," Yishu replied. "Help me out for a moment please." Tangru immediately asked a manager to take over for a bit. She then lightly skipped over. Watching it like this won't be very fun. Let's get onto another account. Chen Guo had a lot of experience and immediately went to turn on another computer. "Don't start yet," she didn't forget to warn Yishu. Even though she didn't really understand the situation, her curiosity had already been sparked. Chapter 180, The Fastest Launcher. Lord Grimm, Poplar Beach was a bit doubtful when he saw that a female character had entered the field. Yeah, Yishu said. Poplar Beach wasn't too surprised though. Lord Grimm had said that he would borrow an account. Male characters were the same as female characters, their stats and equipment weren't much different from each other. However, this was something that Yishu had said during their dispute in front of Desolate Land's entrance. How could the other players know this? All they knew was that, yesterday, Lord Grimm told his opponent to use his main account, so many concluded that these two characters were both sides' main accounts. Poplar Beach. This character was quite famous. Many veterans from the Heavenly Domain, who came to pioneer in the new server, knew this character. Poplar Beach? In Happy Internet Cafe, Chen Guo and Tang Ru had turned on a computer and logged into Glory with Soft Mist. They found the room and entered as a spectator. When Chen Guo saw the opponent's name, she couldn't help but cry it out in surprise. You're familiar with him? Tang Ru asked. I'm not familiar with him, but I do know of him. He's from Blue Brook Guild after all. He's an elite in there, but he's always shouting arrogantly in the World Channel. He's really annoying. Chen Guo was in the Heavenly Domain as well, so she recognized the famous experts from Blue Brook Guild. But clearly, her impression of him wasn't good. Oh, Tang Ru was the type of new player who had no concept of how great Blue Brook Guild was. She just thought that they were the same as Full Moon Guild, they were one of the guilds that had asked them to set a record and nothing more. Why are they peeking? Chen Guo asked Tang Ru in doubt, while yelling at Yishu, hey. You can start now. Okay, Yishu put on his headphones and clicked ready. Poplar Beach immediately clicked ready as well and their match began. Chen Guo and Tang Ru's screen flashed and switched to spectator mode. Are you a male or female? Poplar Beach asked. After entering the field, the two were able to talk to each other. Male, Yishu replied. So you'll be using this character? You're sure that you won't switch? Poplar Beach asked. Yeah. How many rounds to determine who wins or loses? Poplar Beach asked about the details of the duel. 1 round is enough, Yishu laughed. 1 round is enough to let you know the gap between us. I guarantee that you won't fight a second round. Cut the crap, Poplar Beach roared. Even though Chen Guo and Tang Ru weren't able to listen to the two talk in spectator mode, they could hear Yishu, who was sitting next to them. They could hear whatever Yishu was saying. After hearing this, Chen Guo curled her lips towards Tang Ru. He sounds really mad. It started, Tang Ru said. Right now, Chen Guo was controlling the computer, so she needed to adjust the spectating angle. In the ring, after Poplar Beach said that, he took the initiative to attack. His character rushed towards Chasing Haze, which Yishu was controlling. The instant his character entered Chasing Haze's firing range, his character suddenly flashed. Moving in an irregular pattern, Poplar Beach's character immediately blurred into 1, 2, 3, 4 afterimages. Shadow steps. 4 afterimages, Chen Guo immediately shouted. This was a high-leveled Blade Master skill. The skill's effects depended on the player's mechanics. Poplar Beach's movements created 4 perfect afterimages, making Chen Guo yell out in astonishment. In her experience against other Blade Masters, she had never met any players who were able to create 4 afterimages. This Blue Brook Guild's expert really did have the ability to back up his arrogance. Whoa, not bad, Yishu lightly praised. Poplar Beach had quite a bit of experience. His shadow steps were timed perfectly. They were completed the instant he entered Chasing Haze's firing range. To be able to instantly determine Chasing Haze's firing range was a testament to his exceptional knowledge of the game. This judgment could only be made by looking at Chasing Haze's equipment. As for the 4 afterimages that Chen Guo was so astonished about, they weren't anything to Yishu. In the pro scene, which pro Blade Master couldn't do this? For top-tier Blade Masters like Huang Shaoshan, he could create 6.5 afterimages with his movements. 4. Too few. Yishu instantly recognized which of the 4 afterimages was the real one. His mouse moved and Chasing Haze immediately fired out a quantum bomb. At the same time, he tapped the keyboard with his left hand to have Chasing Haze step back. quantum bomb, and laser rifle were similar when they were fired. They had a strong recoil, requiring the user to move their character a step backwards in order to dissolve it. If not, then the character would fall backwards towards the ground. Poplar Beach wasn't too surprised by this quantum bomb. He slid to the side with shadow steps and moved just outside of the quantum bomb's shockwave radius. This precise control made Yishu want to praise him again. But who would have thought that right after Poplar Beach dodged it, he would immediately follow up with a sword draw to hack at the quantum bomb. The system allowed for this type of attack as long as your hand-eye coordination and hand speed was good enough. In theory, you could even slice apart a sharpshooter's bullet. Of course, anyone who could do that would be an expert with mechanics that were even higher than those at the peak. As for people who could slice apart a quantum bomb, quite a few people could do that. However, it also required a good enough hand-eye coordination as well as fast hand speed. However, in this situation, Poplar Beach had already avoided the quantum bomb. For him to suddenly use such a difficult move was completely unnecessary. Besides looking cool, there was no other reason to do so. Yishu helplessly shook his head. Did this guy not understand the situation? Since things were already like this, how could Yishu ignore this huge opening? Without a word, he switched to a gun and used a floating bullet. Launchers could use other weapons other than heavy artillery. It was just that many of the launcher's high-damage skills required a cannon to use. The skill, floating bullet, wasn't actually a launcher skill. It was a level 20 or below Spitfire skill. It was named floating bullet to indicate the strong knock-up effect the skill had. If the skill was used with a smaller gun, the bullet would come out faster. Switching guns and using dual guns was quite common for gunners. Yishu had noticed that Chasing Haze had a reserve gun when he took over the account. As a result, he pulled out the handgun and quickly fired a floating bullet. However, the following scene made Yishu somewhat surprised. When his floating bullet was fired, he immediately put the handgun away and prepared to switch to the cannon to follow up with an attack. But he then saw that Poplar Beach cancelled his sword draw mid-animation and jumped forward, dodging the floating bullet. After landing on the ground, he followed up with a triple slash. As the sword light arced forward, his character closed in on Chasing Haze. Triple slash was a blade master skill that was often used to move quickly. So it was a trap. This guy, Yishu immediately understood. Poplar Beach unexpectedly had a few of his own tricks. His previous actions, which aligned with his show-off personality, were just bait. He used the time that his opponent needed to switch weapons in order to close in. The actions of switching guns wasn't quick because switching weapons had a cooldown. This was one of the biggest obstacles that limited the power of unspecialized characters. Seeing that his ploy had worked, Poplar Beach felt ecstatic in his heart. It was already too late for Chasing Haze to raise her cannon and defend. There wasn't enough time for Chasing Haze to escape with an aerial fire either. He had found an opportunity where he could attack and the opponent had no way of resisting. Poplar Beach had already begun his offensive, however, Yishu returned the surprise. Poplar Beach saw his opponent throw his weapon onto the ground. What? Did he make a mistake and panic? Poplar Beach hadn't expected something like this to happen. Equipment couldn't be dropped in an arena, so could this guy have actually thrown down his weapon by accident? Poplar Beach knew Chasing Haze's firing range, so he had figured out what his opponent's weapon were even before that. Rose Flower Cannon, a level 70 purple weapon. If something like this just dropped on the ground, who wouldn't want to pick it up? Even if you couldn't use it, it was still worth a lot of money. F***CK, Chen Guo jumped up from her seat. That Rose Flower Cannon was hers. Yishu had thrown it on the ground. What if the opponent picked it up and took it away? Chen Guo immediately felt a pang of regret. Hate. Why didn't she bind it? It was because she was too ambitious. She was always thinking of switching for an orange weapon and then sell her purple weapon. But now. However, Poplar Beach wouldn't pick up the weapon right now. Although he was surprised, he still continued his offensive. However, he suddenly saw a knee strike come flying forward from Chasing Haze. Knee strike? What was the use of that? Poplar Beach sneered. It was true that knee strike was an ininterruptible super armor skill, but unfortunately, Poplar Beach had anticipated that Chasing Haze would use some sort of super armor skill to force them apart. As a result, he used a wave wheel slasher, which could break super armor. This skill actually took some time to execute. However, his opponent was the slowest gunner class, a launcher, so he had more than enough time to interrupt this knee strike. Knee strike was a low-leveled sharpshooter skill. Even though the speed of it was unrelated to the user's firing speed, the weight would affect its speed. A launcher using a cannon in heavy armor would be very slow when using this skill. Poplar Beach had thought that his decision was perfect, but unexpectedly, Chasing Haze's knee strike was faster than his wave wheel slasher, so he was launched into the air. Impossible! Poplar Beach adjusted his camera to look down, when he suddenly realized, weapon weight affected the move skill. As a result, what was supposed to be a very slow launcher, without a cannon, in his hands had no weapon. A launcher with nothing in his hands. How fast would the move be? Poplar Beach suddenly realized an issue he had never thought of before.